Thanks, Mary Elena, and thanks to our host today for putting this together. And hello to everybody for out there on the internet, and thanks for logging on. My name is Patrick Stone. I'm the State Government Relations Manager for the National Psoriasis Foundation. The National Psoriasis Foundation advocates for the 7.5 million Americans that are affected by psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. To dial down into this legislation we've worked on through the SAIM coalition, to give you a little bit of a background, I think the approach was that there's been several pieces of legislation in either Maryland, Vermont, Connecticut that have been introduced regarding step therapy, and each of those bills are different. Legislators have an appetite for seeing what other states have done, seeing their success, and repeating that. And so model language is key to giving them that piece of legislation that they can say, this is what New York did, or this is what Maryland did. It was successful. Here's a bill. It's the same. It'll work for your state as well. With that intention, the legislation it has three components to it. The first component is the clinical review criteria aspect of the legislation. What we're saying here is that step therapy protocols should be based on clinical evidence that is brought together by a group of individuals, a panel of individuals that are independent from the insurance companies. We're not trying to ban step therapy in any ways. We just believe that it should be based on pure clinical evidence from an independent panel. That's the first step to this process. The second step, and I had to say that the two doctors that gave a presentation really got me fired up about the amount of time that it takes away from their staff and away from themselves to treat patients in order to get through the process that the insurance companies have laid out. The second part of this bill addresses that component, which is that there should be a clear exception process to step therapy. I won't dial into the reading the legislation, but there are several points that we provide that will provide a clear exception process. If you've taken a medication before, on a previous plan or under your current plan, that would be an exception to the step therapy protocol. If the drug is contraindicated or would have an adverse effect, as methotrexate or was pointed out could have an adverse effect on, say, a woman of childbearing age, that would be a clear exception that's outlined in the legislation. And if you're stable, I think this is a really important part of the legislation. If you are stable on medication, whether it be through your current plan or previous, and the formularies change, which they do quite frequently, you should be allowed to continue that medication and stay stable on your medication so that, well, I think it's important to point out with biologics and some of the emerging technology that it's really important to take this medication on a continuous basis or you lose the efficacy of the medication. So that's a clear point there that we're pushing for. And then the transparency aspect of the bill. If an insurance company is going to have step therapy protocols, they should be transparent about it. They should be on their website, and if they have an exception process, that should be on their website and easily accessible to the patient or the provider. I think oftentimes, and I know the doctors on the town hall today would agree, is that oftentimes finding out this information, what the exception process looks like, who they need to speak with, is a very arduous process. We would like that to be a lot more clear. And I think the second part that Mary Elena wanted me to go through was to give it some highlights of some legislation that we're working on currently within the states and what people can do. And I know Mary Elena will talk briefly after I'm done speaking about the calls to action and how advocates or potential advocates that are on the line can take action, but I'll highlight a few key states. In New York, we had a really good week last week. We had a lobby day in New York where we had a press conference regarding the legislation in New York. The fight in New York has been going on for a number of years, and I believe we made some significant progress thanks to some wonderful advocates on the ground there in New York. However, the bills, which are in the Assembly and in the Senate, are still stuck in their respective committees of origin. If you live in New York and you would like to write a letter to your legislator or you're interested in getting involved and sharing your step therapy story, please do reach out to your organization that sent you this information, or myself, or anybody else that's on this panel. The session is winding down in New York, but it's a 2-year session, and we really have an opportunity, I believe, next year during the legislative session to get that bill passed. I think one of the greatest opportunities we have currently is in California, Assembly Bill 374, which is the step therapy bill, which is sponsored by the Arthritis Foundation. Mark Gaimond and his group have done a wonderful job out in California, along with, in conjunction with NPF, LLS, and other members of the SAIM coalition, to get that legislation to move forward. We had a lobby day there about a month and a half ago, where we had nearly 60 advocates from different organizations on the ground talking to legislators about this issue. As a result, as a direct result, I hope, of that day, that bill has passed out of the Assembly and is moving towards the Senate. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us. We've got a great opportunity to pass that bill in California. Illinois, not as much of an opportunity there at this point, but next year we still do have an opportunity. We had legislation in Illinois. We again had a lobby day. We had patients testify from the NPF on the step therapy legislation and how it impacts their day-to-day life. Unfortunately, that bill is not going to pass this year. We're going to address it next year, but we're looking for more patient stories and looking to build a stronger coalition in Illinois on the ground. North Carolina is still in session. It is a budget year in North Carolina, but we still have a bill there that is hopefully going to move forward in some fashion. If you're interested in joining our coalition, please do reach out to me. It's a wonderful coalition, and we've got some great leadership behind our bill in North Carolina. I could go on and on for probably about an hour.
Can you give us a website? Can you give us a website or something people can go to, or a place where they can go to if they want to get involved in your coalition or see the model bill, or what's the best way for them to get a hold of you so they can get involved?
So you can go to the National Psoriasis Foundation's website, and under our advocacy tab, you can find our contact information. There's a form that you can click on to take action. It'll send you your information to me. You can also follow us on Twitter at @NPF. We'll have a tweet that'll go out right after this town hall that will provide an opportunity for you to take action. So look for us in all avenues of social media. I'll